All right, so what is the goal of academic writing? It's completely different than what you think it actually is. In fact, the goal of academic writing is to say the most absurd thing that you could possibly think about and try to backwards and duck and create a set of structures such that people will believe that. And really, really smart people are going to believe that particular absurd thing that you are saying. You can see it's completely different than what you thought it is. And now, why is it that we actually do this? And the reason is that you're trying to tell something that nobody else has thought about. And then you are trying to create a convincing case to people that are a bunch of skeptics and they don't care and that they're very self-interested. And so your goal is totally different than what you have been told up to now. It's not about creating some formal statements and making sure that everything is all checked, all these boxes are checked off and all of that kind of stuff. It's completely the opposite. It is telling a story, it's telling a narrative, it is telling a convincing case such that people actually believe this thing. It's walking into the room and say, I can show you that there are flying pigs. And once you actually describe how this actually works and you tell everybody this convincing case that flying pigs actually exist, and you have the most skeptical, the most critical, the most angry, bitter people that you've ever met, and you've convinced them all that flying pigs exist, then that is a good way to actually create academic writing. So if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Massac. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship. And I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people who help me out that I want to pay the favor forward to help you out. So I actually created this sharing economy editing, writing platform, building more stuff out. Go check it out, reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. Greatly appreciate it if you go take a look. I think you're going to really, really benefit from it. So, the goal, as you've probably been told, is that it's all structured and that there's sort of formality to all of that kind of stuff. But you know, as a true academic writer, as somebody who actually does research on a daily basis, and as somebody that has seen how people do academic writing and read so many different articles, it is not that case at all. It's not about the sort of formalities as you're thinking, but it's really about the storytelling. It's about the narrative that you're actually saying. And what your goal is to find some absurd thing, something that's really curious and interesting, and figuring out how to create a convincing case that this will show up in the wild on some rare circumstances. This particular interesting thing is going to show up. And then you have to convince other people that this thing actually exists. Now, the problem is that those other people are very skeptical. They do not like you. They really don't like you because you're wasting their time. And the more absurd this thing is, the more skeptical that they're going to be, and the more that they're going to not like you. And so you have to create a even stronger case towards what this thing actually is and telling that stronger story. So it's funny, you know, when I hear all of the news about people believing these kind of things and those kind of things, you know, the sort of typical, you know, magical kind of stuff, sort of anti-science kind of stuff, I think it's hilarious because, you know, scientists are trained to tear this stuff apart. And we're looking at this stuff and we're thinking like, this is not true at all. But the goal and the reason is people are trying to dupe us all the time, right? Like that is part of what it means to be a scientist. And so you're very skeptical. So what the goal is to tell us a narrative, tell a story such that lots of people will believe this thing. And it's not just a lot of people, it's the smartest people in the room. It's what's called gatekeepers. These are people that understand what's going on and they can tell a convincing story that you can tell a convincing story that nobody else has thought about. And once you do that, once you tell that convincing story and you walk them through all of this sort of storytelling that gets them to the point that they're like, wow, that's really cool. I never thought about that. If you can get them to say that, I never thought about that, that's when you actually have good academic writing. And so what does it mean to do this? You have to tell people what we have done before. You have to tell people the why this is interesting. You have to tell them why this is a curious thing. You have to tell them what you are currently proposing. There's a whole structure to all of this kind of stuff, and how to sort of tell this convincing, interesting thing such that people actually pay attention to it. And it is not obvious, and it requires a very much an art of writing. And that art of writing means both, both talking from your point of view and your stories, because that's how you get those interesting things, right? That's, you're telling your own individual stories when you talk about yourself, what actually happened, but in a scientific way. You actually create interesting things. And then it's also that, but also figuring out how to tell narratives in such a way it's convincing, it's nice. So you want, like, think of it as more of like prose, where you're thinking of, I can write things, stuff that in short sentences, long sentences. I'm using, different tones. I'm using sort of different, ways of posing the same questions, all these kind of things, of thinking of how to get people interested and how to spark their interest. If it's all boring and it's all structured, like boring, and it's completely all structured, nobody's paying attention to it, they don't care, right? So you have to think about, how can I model after the best writers of today? And as I model after the best writers, where people pick this thing up and they can't put this thing down, that's what you should be aiming for. That's really what the goal is. And then it's not only that, but then writing it in such a way that it is reliable and somebody else can find that evidence over and over and over again. And then they can come back to it and say, hey, how do I actually do this? I go back and I actually see what they wrote. So, the scientific effort, the academic effort, academic writing, it's about having this messy process. The whole thing's messy, and then cutting the story through it so that you can convince a lot of people. That's what my advisor told me. And it's the truth. There's a lot of mess that goes on, and then you got to figure out how to tell that story so that other people are paying attention to it. All right, so hopefully this helps you out. Give me a thumbs up, do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care, and have a wonderful day. Bye.